This is LBC with Lewis Goodall.
Time is 12:34. Well, from Westminster to Washington now, and every single day we wake up to the latest developments in Donald Trump's brain, or Elon Musk's brain. And yesterday we were treated to the astounding sight of President Trump answering questions from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, flanked to his side by his political secretary to his left, but also to his right, Elon Musk, wearing a black Undertaker-type coat, a black MAGA cap, and just beneath him, scurrying around, his child. It was bizarre, it was surreal, even by the standards of MAGA-land. And various questions were put to the, in effect, co-equal presidents, including previous claims that Elon Musk had made, about condoms.
Mr. Musk, you said on X that an example of the fraud that you have cited was $50 million of condoms was sent to Gaza. But after fact-check this, it apparently Gaza in Mozambique, and the program was to protect them against HIV. So can you correct the statements? It wasn't sent to Hamas, actually. It was sent to Mozambique, which makes sense why condoms was sent there. Yeah. And how can we make sure that all the statements that you said were correct, so we can trust what you say?
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes. I'm not sure we should be sending $50 million worth of condoms to anywhere, frankly. I'm not sure that's something Americans would be really excited about.
There's Elon Musk there, a man who certainly has never knowingly, with 12 children, used a condom, and certainly never knowingly much been bothered about whether or not he's telling the truth. You know, it doesn't matter, does it? Sometimes you don't always get it right. You don't always get it right. I mean, it's fine, though. It's fine, because it's not as if he's got 230 million followers on his corrupted social media platform that he's spreading his lies and misinformation to on a regular basis, and everyone thinks it's completely fine and all right and normal. It's fine. Don't worry, everybody. But it's okay, because that wasn't all that was said in the Oval Office yesterday. Oh, no, we've got more. And we've got this response here to the president from a reporter, having to ask once again whether or not it is the case that the president's Gaza plan would include and involve forcible repatriation of the Gazans in the Gaza Strip.
Mr. President, you've said before that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. We're going to get it going eventually where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East. It's going to be for the people in the Middle East, but I think it can be a diamond. It can be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East, and you're going to have peace. It's going to bring peace in the Middle East.
We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it. Sounds like Trump is going to marry Gaza, not buy it, marry Gaza. But the good news is that there was, as serious as all of that was, there was something even more important that the president wanted to get off his chest.
This has cost both the government and private industry an absolute ton of money and left consumers all over the country wildly dissatisfied with their straws. So we're asking aspects of the federal government, federal departments and agencies to look at their existing procurement processes, and we're asking your Domestic Policy Council to look holistically at this issue to address it, and it really is something that affects ordinary Americans in their everyday lives.
We're going back to plastic straws. These things don't work. I've had them many times, and on occasion they break, they explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation. So we're going back to plastic straws. I think it's okay.
On occasions they break, they explode. It's a ridiculous situation. Not talking about condoms there, fortunately enough. Instead, talking about plastic straws, the president. Important work that the 47th president of the United States has to conduct, has got to do, flanked by Elon Musk, making it clear what he thought about plastic straws. The most powerful office on the face of the earth. Let's catch up now with Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent, of course. Simon, even by Trump standards, this was quite something to watch.
Yes, it's just worth picking up, Lewis, on the fact that they always seem terribly obsessed with explosive devices. The condoms that were allegedly going to Hamas, that President Trump said a couple of weeks ago he had stopped from being sent to Hamas. Nonetheless, at the time, he inexplicably claimed that Hamas had somehow got their hands on them and were using them to make bombs. I don't quite know how you do that. Now we discover that paper straws are potential explosive devices. I think what we witnessed yesterday was, frankly, the country going full Ruritania. If you've ever watched the Marx Brothers, no relation, Groucho Marx in Duck Soup, acting as the president of Freedonia. At least that's satirical. What we saw in the Oval Office yesterday was simply the most astonishing tableau anybody that has ever covered modern American politics has witnessed, and underscored the fact that Elon Musk now is acting essentially as the de facto prime minister in a country that doesn't have a prime minister, and in a country that doesn't have anything like prime minister's question time, where the Prime Minister would be held accountable by Parliament. He is absolutely unrestrained by Donald Trump, and we should explain that the ostensible reason why Elon Musk was in that room yesterday was because one of the executive orders that Donald Trump was signing was to empower Mr. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which of course is not a real government department, to pursue, as the executive order puts it, large-scale workforce reductions across the federal government. They're talking about, for every 4 civil servants that resign or are fired, they're only going to replace them with 1. And that one person has to be an absolute dyed-in-the-wool, make America great again loyalist. So this executive order substantially expands Elon Musk's capacity to oversee hiring at federal agencies. Mr. Musk made a whole slew of absolutely unsubstantiated claims about the fraud that he says he is uncovering throughout the federal government. Donald Trump said that the total amount of fraud within the federal government may even top $1 trillion by the time Mr. Musk is finished. They talked together about kickbacks that they claimed figures that the U.S. Agency for International Development had received as a result of dispersing the now, I think it's fair to say, former humanitarian development assistance organization's budget. The elephant in the room was the fact that when Donald Trump was president first time around, every foreign delegation that arrived in Washington, D.C. dutifully booked into the Trump Hotel in the center of Washington, D.C. White House events were organized at Mar-a-Lago, at the president's private residences, and paid for with taxpayer money. And they're sitting there talking about kickbacks at the U.S. Agency for International Development. The other astonishing aspect about that press conference yesterday, Lewis, was the questions that were not asked. And I think it's really important to underscore what's taken place within the White House press corps over the last 3 weeks. A large number of far-right pro-Trump news organizations have suddenly been afforded room at the White House, and what the White House relentlessly refers to as legacy media institutions are being derailed. So yesterday, the Associated Press White House reporter was denied access to that event in the Oval Office because the Associated Press, the nation's most respected wire service, is refusing to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Astounding.
So when you watch that press availability take place, and there were some serious-minded journalists in that room who did a shameful job yesterday. At no point did anybody think that they needed to ask Elon Musk if he's abiding by the court order that limits his access to the Treasury's payment systems. Has he destroyed all of the private and confidential records, including millions of Social Security numbers that his team of cyber whiz kids was able to access through the Treasury's payment systems over a week ago? He stood there railing, Mr. Musk, about the power of unelected bureaucrats.
Who elected you, pal?
Not a single reporter made the point that nobody elected him. He insisted that he was practicing maximum transparency because he was telling everybody what he was doing over X, his own social media platform. Nobody asked either Musk or Trump on what authority they had closed the U.S. Agency for International Development, an agency that is congressionally funded and reports to Congress. And I mean, most astonishingly, I thought, nobody asked him what the kid was doing in the Oval Office. What was this child doing in an... I mean, it's like, how is this possible? No one asked him about the kid.
Yeah. It is mind-boggling, isn't it, Simon? It's sort of hard, it's head-spinning. And meanwhile, given all of this is happening, you would expect, of course, in terms of the US Constitution, one of the branches of government which was supposed to be a check and balance on an executive which is out of control. The founding fathers had thought about this. They had considered the idea of having a president. They were accustomed to a head of state that they thought was behaving improperly. That was King George III. They designed a constitutional framework to make sure that there were checks and balances. One of them is the Congress, the legislative branch, which is actually the first branch of government, as outlined in Article 1. And yet House Speaker Mike Johnson has said that he agrees wholeheartedly that the Trump administration can make sweeping cuts to federal spending without their approval, which is taking a position which is completely at odds with the Constitution's separation of powers and undercuts his own branch of government.
Correct. And there are two things that are taking place here simultaneously. First of all, Elon Musk and others are engaged in state capture. They are taking control of government departments and government agencies in a bid partly to aggrandize power and substantially to enrich themselves, because the less regulation, the less oversight there is of their own industries and their own federal contracts that their private businesses enjoy, the better it is for them. The other thing that's taking place here is, beyond anything that we've seen before, an assertion of an all-powerful executive. I mean, we thought, Dick Cheney back in the day was the evil Rasputin to George W. Bush's efforts to try and push the powers of the presidency. This is now becoming a conversation about whether there are any restraints whatsoever on presidential power. The president's lawyer, Alina Habba, yesterday, she now has some kind of role at the White House. I think she's one of his legal counsel members at the White House, was advancing the argument that separation of powers actually does not amount to co-equal branches of government. The legislative, Congress, the judiciary, the Supreme Court, and the executive, the presidency. She says nothing can touch the power of the presidency. The presidency is far and away the most important of the three. Now, that is simply not the case, and it's all written down in black and white in the United States Constitution, over which these people are now riding roughshod, and every single guardrail so far has failed. Congress completely supine, Republicans controlling both chambers of Congress, barely a murmur from Congress about what is taking place here at the moment on the Republican side. From the Fourth Estate, the press, total failure yesterday, and not just yesterday, continuing failure over the last 3 weeks, properly to articulate the nature of what is taking place here to the American people. And then the big question, and we talked about this earlier in the week, is the judiciary. Are these legal judgments that already Donald Trump is flouting, are they going to hold? Now, he said yesterday he always observes court orders, and he repeated that a couple of times during the course of this press availability. But even in that press availability, both he and Elon Musk went on the offensive against the judiciary, said that it was inconceivable that if you showed a judge that fraud was being committed on a grand scale at the U.S. Agency for International Development, he could possibly argue that you didn't have the right to gut it and halt its operations. So the real question remains today, are we heading rapidly to a point where this government is simply going to ignore court orders? And if it does, it's very hard to see, given that the president has that immunity from prosecution opinion by the Supreme Court for anything that he does within his official actions. But it's very hard to see how America, as we have known it throughout our lives, survives.
But just finally and briefly, Simon, it is worth saying that actually up to now at least, the president is enjoying pretty robust approval numbers, much better than his first term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's partly, of course, because people are being misinformed by his administration. I mean, they claim they're going to save $1 trillion by identifying fraud in the federal government. We haven't seen a single piece of paper that stands that claim up. I mean, the Gaza thing was a bit of bold swashbuckling. It's been rejected by the entire world apart from Israel. But people quite like this notion that, you know, you can wave a magic wand at Gaza and solve the problem, even if it means dispossessing 2 million Palestinians of their homes. I mean, we've seen it in other areas. So there is a huge gulf now between what people are hearing from the White House, hearing from MAGA, hearing from Republicans, and what is actual reality. And without the checks and balances and the guardrails, we're going full Bolsonaro, full Viktor Orban, we're going Ruritania.
Simon Marks there, RBC's Washington correspondent. Developments from the American capital become more astounding by the day, by the hour, by the minute. We'll keep you up to date, of course, as always, on LBC.